Broadcasting live from the Roanoke Valley of southwestern Virginia. Join us and see what life looks like from a medium's perspective with Reverend Tracey Lockwood, the medium's medium. We'll explore the tools of psychic development, hear stories and experiences from the other side, and learn to listen to our natural intuition. Now, our host, Reverend Tracey Lockwood.
Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. Before we get into today's exciting guest, our mystery guest, I wanted to tell you that I offer a 12-week training and certification program for your psychic mediumship with 3 levels of certification, depending on your performance. I also offer 4-week training programs in psychic development, advanced mediumship, spirit art, and channeling. And I'm just debuting a 24-week self-study program that you can purchase unit by unit or month by month as a whole. The other training is live via live webinar classroom, and you can study from your home as well. But the self-study beginners program is a 24-week program. So just wanted to let you know that, and you can check it out on my website at mediumtraceylockwood.com. Well, we had Minister Val Williams with us talking about mediumship training and teaching, and today I have another illustrious teacher with me today. She is a spiritualist minister, speaker, medium, and healer. She holds a degree in education, and she works in an education program of intuitive and mediumistic development through the Inner Spiritual Center, which she's co-founder and co-director of. She offers private readings. She also demonstrates mediumship, and she's on the faculty of the teaching faculty of Fellowships of the Spirit in Cassadaga, New York. And like me, she cares about quality and integrity and evidence in readings. And so today, I would like to warmly welcome Reverend Medium Sharon Siubis. Welcome.
Hi, Tracey. Thank you so much.
I am so tickled to have you on the show. And a lot of our listeners like to check in and check out, kind of snoop about and check out who I'm talking to for the day. So I want to give them your website, and that is innerspiritualcenter.org.
That's correct.
Yep, innerspiritualcenter.org if you want to check her out while we're talking here. Oh my goodness. You came to me by high recommendation of another medium that I deeply respect. And I just was so tickled to find you because each of us is unique in the way that we teach, and each of us has our own approach and ethics and all those things attached. And I just was so tickled to find you because I felt like I found a sister spirit in the effort of helping other people develop their abilities. Tell us a little bit, I guess, this is called From a Medium's Perspective. So I guess the first thing that I'd like to ask you is, how has being a medium, a psychic medium, and I say that not to diminish, but to expand the breadth of what you do, and also teaching at the level that you do, how has that changed your view on life?
Well, first of all, Tracey, thank you so much for having me. And I feel it's a mutual. When we first spoke, it was kind of like just sitting down with a friend that I've known for 20 years, and it's been a pleasure. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Big hug right through the.
That's a good question, and I think sometimes we don't sit back as mediums, as teachers, as people who are developing what we do, because we are always developing what we do, no matter if we've been doing this for, a month or 20, 25, 30 plus years. We're always learning and we're always growing. And I feel, for me, there's a couple of areas that I look at differently now. One is my patience level. I tend not to have a lot of patience sometimes. And I found that with my own mediumship development and unfoldment, I have had to find my patience, because it's not where you snap your fingers and everything is right there. You have to work at it like anything else that's worthwhile. So I've found some of my patience level in teaching. It's such a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to work with people in developing their own intuitiveness, in developing their mediumship, because you see people blossom. You see them move into areas that they didn't always feel they could. Sometimes we have this thought that's out there that only special people can work as mediums. And I don't find that to be true. I find that we are all first and foremost souls. So therefore, why can't we all? And as we find those parts of us that may have been kind of pushed down inside of us, and we start to explore them and start to bring them forward, there's such a transformation in people that I see in their abilities and their confidence level. And then, to me, the more important thing is then they take that out into the world as a service to others. And that's what I get the most pleasure out of in my teaching, in this development process. So, yeah, it's something I think we have to take stock of sometimes as those people who are in those roles as teachers, and where we can make the most impact and the most difference. And then let those people carry on, adding to it with their own personalities. And
yes, no cookie cutters here. That's right.
Yeah. So, and then, we have an opportunity to bring into the world a lot of healing. We have an opportunity to bring into the world a lot of good mediums who can bring through information from the spirit world for people, and give them some hope, or give them again some healing or some closure, whatever that happens to be for that client or those people.
Yeah, passing along the torch. And when you were talking about, we were talking about individually, it's not a cookie cutter thing. That doesn't mean that there isn't a standard of practice either, because underlying everything is a quality that goes on, and you represent that in your teaching as well.
Thank you. I hope so. We strive for that. We look at mediumship from the teaching perspective as with anything that is built to last and built to be able to support additional structures, is that you need a good foundation. You need good structure within your mediumship work. And then, those areas where maybe we can look at consistency I think it just becomes a little easier for people. It's like anything. If we can follow a structure with our own personality, our own input, but have that solid spine, that solid basis, then we have something to build on.
Yes. And deepening, like you mentioned, I think as well that everyone is a natural medium, a natural psychic. I think it's just a facet of us being spiritual beings, but there's a difference in having spontaneous occurrences that don't have any base for them. They're just, spirit reaching out to the person that's open and making themselves known, versus being able to discipline that focus and ability, or lack of focus, depending on what point, allowing that energy in on a regular basis and being able to connect at will. And it takes some skill to develop that ability.
Well, sure. And like anything that is worthwhile, it does take some dedication. It takes some focus. It takes the work in order to get the results. And I think one of the areas that drives me a little crazy sometimes is where, there is a kind of a one-day workshop on a lot of very difficult areas or intense areas, and people sometimes walk away from that thinking that that is all that there is.
Oh, it's just the beginning.
And it's just absolutely, it's just the beginning.
I know for me, in almost, if not every reading that I do, or student that I teach, or class that I teach, I learn too, because sometimes it isn't until the question is asked that there is an answer. And so in their pursuing their curiosities and questions, and seeing it from their perspective, or bringing an unschooled, unscripted kind of viewpoint, and asking questions that I wouldn't have thought of, when that, and I know this happens with you too, the answers just kind of pour through you. And you learn something along the way too. And it's awesome. It's, our students, I always think of it that my clients become my teachers and my students become my teachers. And that's not to displace the professional mediums that I've studied under, or we have become, because we have arrived. No, just kidding. We're, like you said, we're still working on it too. But it's in their quest for knowledge that knowledge begins to flow. And I'm often, taking notes for them, but also taking notes on the side for me to contemplate later after a class or after a reading, something that came through that I just never thought about that way. I love the perspective that's always fresh from spirit.
Sure. Absolutely. And, I will always say, I don't know everything, and I will be the first to stand up and say that, because I don't know everything.
No.
And if somebody asks me something from a student perspective that I don't know, I will say, but, I do not know that. Let me put some thought into it. Let me go research it. Let's see what we can come up to and up with. But I feel like you had just said, the people who are just coming into this or working with this in the beginning, they do have a different perspective on it. And it makes us as teachers become more inquisitive. It makes us as teachers become better teachers.
Yes.
And we have a kind of a thought in our center, that says that what our goal is for the students to become better than the teachers, because that's the way it should be.
Yeah, you're talking about that. I just this week had a private student, and she was having these experiences both in her dream state and also in her awake, sort of daydreamy state, of sort of transposing her energy into other people's storylines. And it was so interesting. My first reaction was, oh, well, maybe she's having a past life memory. But as she described it, I realized no, because the timelines wouldn't, synchronize, because some of them were concurrent with the life that she's in right now. And for me, I kind of draw the line at being multidimensional and having many simultaneous lifetimes, because I feel like at some point we just have to go, whoa, okay, just let's deal with this life, you know?
Yeah, life is crazy enough. We don't need to add to it.
I'm not saying that's not possible, but I don't want to talk about the interweaving of time and space to a level that you just lose all points of reference. But it was so interesting. And I realized as she continued to tell me what she was experiencing, that she is so empathic that most of us who are empathic, we pick up maybe a mood or a physical symptom or something like that. And then we have to separate, wait, that's not me, that's somebody else. But she was picking up entire storylines of spirits that were attached to those other people in her lifetime. She's such a natural medium, and yet such a novice, and doesn't have the confidence that her natural talent will ultimately bring her. And it's so exciting. You know, some people are just, I mean, I know you and I are the bomb diggity because we are, but I'm just saying, like, there are some students that come through that just blow my mind sometimes with one aspect or another of their ability to connect. And it's so exciting. And I don't feel jealous, because I feel like, okay, Tracey, you can't really read for every person on the planet or teach every person on the planet. Like, there are enough people. So just, you know, let people be themselves and let them develop. And I love that you incorporate the individuality of the student with the structure of that. What's your background? Like, how'd you get here today? Like, yeah.
Well, we all have our stories, don't we? You know, there's so many people that have really profound experiences when they were younger, and, you know, saw people standing in their room. I didn't have any of that. You know, if it occurred, I wasn't aware of it on a conscious basis. I do recall a couple of things from early on of just kind of an understanding, and I guess that's the best word I can use for it. But I was on the younger side, and I remember feeling like my body was a costume. And, you know, I didn't really understand that till much later on, when I could look at it and say, well, we are kind of in a costume, aren't we?
That's brilliant. Yeah.
You know, but I did have that sense. And then the other area, again, younger, was that I didn't really understand if you saw a group or a family at a graveyard and obviously upset, crying. And I remember saying to my mom one time, we were driving past an area where a funeral was being held and people were crying. And I remember saying to her, that I don't understand why they're so upset, because they're not there. And again, on a conscious level, I really didn't understand that. But somewhere on that soul level, it was resonating with me that our physical bodies are here for a purpose, for a reason. And when that time is up, we're not up. We're ready for the next adventure. And I really got into the idea of what is this all about when I was in college, and I received a phone call from home. And I had just been home that past weekend. You know, my family was all there, my cousins and my aunt and my uncle. We all lived in the same area. So it was like this one big cult kind of thing. And my grandmother was there, and we were very close. And I went to pick up the phone, and this was in the day when phones were actually attached to the wall. So
I remember, yes.
I actually had to get up off the couch and walk over. So I walked over, and as I reached for the phone, I heard my grandmother, as clear as day, say, "I'm okay." And as I'm picking up the phone, I'm thinking to myself, why am I hearing my grandmother? It makes no sense to me. As I picked up the phone, it was my mom saying my grandmother had just passed away that afternoon. And without warning, she hadn't been ill as we knew it to be. So that started getting me a little curious about.
That's like your first
wake-up call.
Well, yeah, but also like she utilized your abilities like a client would. So that's your first, or maybe not the first, but one of the very first spirit communications.
And, you know,
so naturally, yes.
It got me trying to figure all this out. And I was kind of on a little bit of a journey for that. And then life gets in the way, and you know, you have things like marriages and children and all of that kind of stuff, and jobs. And so I really kind of left it in the background for quite some time, and then got back into it as a later adult. So, you know, those experiences, as maybe not profound as some other people may have had, for me, they were the stepping stones to get me to question what's going on. And I think we should always question it. We should never just assume, and we should never just accept. And we need to question as we go along, what's going on here? Does this make sense? Can we do this better? You know, all of these things that make us better mediums. And then ultimately,
I'm sorry, I just wanted to interject that, and not on a basis of insecurity, like, whoa, what's going on? Let me see, you know, but in a sense of getting information and then continuing to deepen it, and just not making like letting go of our intellect so that we can, and our preconceived ideas, so that we can allow fresh information. Is that what you were talking about?
Well, it's along that line also. It's just that we also have to be I feel, my opinion is that we need to be grounded in what we do. We have to live our lives. You know, we have things that we have to do. We have families or jobs or laundry or whatever it happens to be. We have things that we do in this life. And we can't always be living in a different vibratory rate, as in the spirit world. We can't always assume that everything happens because of the spirit world. Yes. Sometimes, you know, things just fall off a shelf. You know, sometimes
right. Sometimes a door just pops open.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Yes.
So we have to be grounded in what we do. And I'm a very firm believer that we have to, when we work, whether it's working professionally this way or whether we're working in a classroom as a student developing, we have to do our work and then we stop. We don't just walk around open to everything 24/7. It's not healthy, and it doesn't help us live this life that we're meant to live. So, you know, I'm a pretty big advocate of having in our structure that when you work, you work, and you work, and you work. Yes. But when you're done, then the spirit world as an intelligent entity, as an intelligent world, has to have rules also. Yes. And if somebody's being interrupted by the spirit world in times and places that are not appropriate, it is appropriate for us to put the rules in with the spirit world of how best to work with us. Because believe me, the spirit world still needs us, because if they didn't, they won't. So they need us as much as we need them in this communication work, and they need to be respectful of what's good for us as we need to be respectful of what's good for them as well as other people.
Yeah, so, I agree. I think not only can we leach out like our subtle energies and become drained at a different way than we would physically, mentally, or emotionally. It's like another aspect. Mm-hmm. But also it sort of signifies poor boundaries or undeveloped boundaries. Like you wouldn't well, maybe you would, but not you, but like some people might tolerate someone just pouring out all their angst, you know, all the time and for hours on the phone and that kind of thing. But you have to set boundaries, and that's a really good point, that you have to set them with spirit as well.
Yeah. And it's not, and you know, I've had people say, well, can you do that? Because it's the spirit world. But the spirit world is not an all-knowing place either. You know, there's learning curves, there's learning levels in the spirit world also. So, you know, we can't treat it as something that is like breakable china. We have to be respectful, but we also have to be respectful for our own energy, for what we need to do. And that's where the structure comes in place, that we don't just sit and we don't just wait for the spirit world to hopefully contact us. We go after it. We open our communication, and we are looking for who's next in line, and we are working in a dynamic and reactive and proactive way, not a passive sitting and waiting for them to show up. Yeah. So part of the structure in terms for me and for what we look at is, you know, that there is a time to work, and in that time that we expect the spirit world to be there, and we go after the information, and we start the dialogue, and we start the communication. We don't have to sit there and wait for somebody to tap us on the shoulder and say, here we are.
Right. And, you know, a lot of people worry, like, am I bothering them? But it's like, no, you're not, because they're eternal, for one thing, like us. And they are, like you mentioned earlier, trying to reach us, to get that clarity through, to get that communication through. And also, I think just like we as mediums, when we connect with the other side, give a clearer picture to our client who is sitting for the reading. But also, I think that we give a clearer picture of the client to the spirit, because I know I've had people say, oh, it's so good to see you. Like, and I know that they see us in their everyday connection with us. So it's not like they can't see people, but I kind of wonder if it's a bit like we see spirits, you know, and then when they are able to focus through a medium to, or someone who's willing to serve as a medium, I should rephrase that, that they see clearly the person that's there too. It just, I don't know, it's like a conduit that forms between the two.
Yeah, and you know, the other point on that whole area is it is a conduit. However, the spirit world is also not an on-demand system. So sometimes somebody may not be available. So, and that's a hard one, because, you know, somebody might be sitting as a client or as a student saying, well, why wouldn't they come? Why wouldn't they show up? And to me, there's a couple of reasons. One is that for whatever reason, the medium is not the best medium for that communicator, because not all mediums work the best with all communicators, and vice versa.
Yeah, some people are tuned better to spirits, for instance, that have been over there a while. Others can connect more easily, or just as easily, you know, before, during, and after transition immediately. And I think there's a different energy to, I want to call it the seasoning of a spirit when they've adapted to their life over there. And also, don't you think there are boundaries too? Like, I have a deal with my guides, and I don't know that I originally intended it like on purpose, like, okay, here's the deal with my guides. But I noticed that I will not allow, and I'm sure you neither, and no good medium should be doing it, allow any kind of negativity close to, because it's a high vibrational space. So if there's someone who's passed over that was an unrepentant pedophile, for instance, then they're just not allowed. I think of them like on the bench. They have to just sit there. I'm aware that they're there, but they can't talk, because if you don't have something nice, you can't, don't say anything at all. But what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we can certainly look at that in that way, but I would also look at it in the sense that perhaps, and again, we don't know for sure, because every time we work with a communicator, it's an experiment and an experience. But perhaps that person had something to say to a client about an apology.
Yes.
So I look at it sometimes that if we keep them on the bench, okay, are we doing them, and are we doing the spirit world the service that they may need in that moment?
No, I'm with you on the same page. I just meant an unrepentant pedophile, like someone who's still in a mindset that is not healed. Do you know what I mean?
I do understand that.
But yes, I've had, pedophilic grandfathers come through and apologize for what they did, or, it does happen.
Again, it's not a free ride for the spirit world, just that they bring an apology. But, I have found that so many times there are situations within a family or within a friendship or within whatever it is that are left unresolved because somebody has passed to the spirit side. And sometimes the closure in those things, whether it's an apology, whether it's just, I know you couldn't get to the hospital before I passed and it's okay.
Yes.
Some of these things that we carry on our shoulders with all of this, that's where I find the healing in mediumship.
Hands down, yes. Yeah. Hands down, yes. You mentioned earlier about, when you're working in mediumship, that it's important to be able to detach and disengage when you're done work. What do you teach people as far as how to close the energy down and switch off or on to the physical, or what do you teach? How do you address that?
You mean when you're done?
Yeah, when you're done working, how do you teach people to close, or whatever you call it?
To me, it's pretty simple. You set the rule with the spirit world that when you are done with that communication, or done with the session, or done with the time period, whatever you're doing, when you are done, you can basically say, I'm done, and that needs to be respected. And you don't need to say it out loud. You just have that little thought in your head, okay,
pulse,
I'm done.
Yeah, of will, yes.
Because we do need to be mindful that the spirit world doesn't know everything. And, they don't necessarily, if there's a new communicator working with you, who you've never worked with before, they don't necessarily know the best way to work with you, and they've got to figure it out too. So if we can work with very simple instructions of, okay, I'm ready to go, here I am, versus, okay, we're done now, goodbye kind of thing. It's not much different than walking into Starbucks and saying hello to somebody, having a chat, and then saying, okay, bye-bye. I've got to leave now, and kind of don't follow me home, because that would be strange.
Stalkery. Yes, exactly. So do you teach techniques for grounding after readings? I know sometimes there are just different things that I incorporate. What do you teach as far as maybe a technique for a student that does have trouble? Because sometimes there's sort of an ambivalence, like it's like, oh, the spirits are bothering me. And of course, we know that we have the power, because material world trumps physical world, because we're given dominion on the earth, and we have the right to occupy our own space and body and mind and all that all we have to do is say it, and it is. But there's sometimes like this ambivalent attachment. It's like, oh, the spirits, they never leave me alone, they're chattering all the time, and they bother me when I'm sleeping, and this, and we might tell them to stop. But there's kind of underneath that harried sense of spirits bothering, sort of a fascination that spirits are bothering them, so they don't let go of that.
Absolutely.
So how do you teach, how would you approach a student who says that they can't let go, and that when they first heard, like, it's just tell them,
absolutely.
So do you have some techniques for grounding or for closing the energy that you find really helpful?
Yeah, we can look at that in a second. I just want to address one thing before we do that. One thing is that in mediumship, there's a very fine line sometimes between communicating with the spirit world, seeing, hearing, feeling, whatever that is, and true mental illness. And
yes, good point. Yes.
So we need really, as teachers, as people in this profession, to understand that sometimes people coming into mediumship shouldn't be coming into mediumship because of a true mental capacity issue or a mental illness or an emotional illness. And if it's determined that that is the reason why somebody is being bothered by the spirit world and they can't shut it down or turn it off on their own or with some guidance and some help, then it is our really prerogative that they don't follow into this work until there's some grounding help for them from a professional psychiatrist. So
I've seen that, but I've also seen people that do maybe suffer from being bipolar or being depressed or something like that, where actually the process of opening their abilities up helps them heal because they become more, it's sort of like trusting themselves and learning to differentiate. I had a friend that we talked about this stuff before I ever started doing it professionally, and she was psychotic, and so she would see and hear things that were not real, and she was clairvoyant and clairaudient, and she could differentiate the two based on where the information came into her. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, and I wish I could remember specifically, but I think she said if the information was within her auric field, it was a gift. If it was external, it was hallucination.
Well, but I think that's the point here. You know, you first have to determine really what is the best path for an individual person. Yeah. And it may not be developing their mediumship at that moment.
She wasn't practicing or trained.
Right.
But I just found it interesting that as someone who did suffer that malady, that she was able to differentiate it, but not everybody is able to differentiate.
Exactly.
And you have to have those good boundaries.
So you do have to look at that first. Then the second part of that is if you give somebody the tools in order to not allow that you stop it and you put in the really strong boundaries that you were just talking about, mm-hmm. and they still are having some difficulty, it may very well be because of that fascination or that want for them to still keep that communication line open. And then again, as teachers, we need to determine if they cannot shut that down for themselves, should they be in mediumship at this time? Because again, being
distracting to a class, and the knowledge of the group as a whole can suffer if somebody's getting lost.
It can, and it also can be not healthy for them.
Yes.
So again, it's kind of looking at those things and making a determination. If people are of the mindset they're putting in strong boundaries on occasion, because we are still sensitive to energy, and you're going to pick up things from time to time. We were talking about that very earlier, kind of a spontaneous thing. Mm-hmm. And that will happen. But we really do teach our students and look at this as a very kind of practical and grounded method that
yes,
when you work, and when you're done, you're done.
Yes.
We don't get into things like opening and closing chakras. I feel that's more for other things. It's not necessarily that I have found for spirit communication. So we don't spend time on that, but we spend time that maybe somebody just needs a few minutes of quiet when they're done working.
Yes, and, like coming slowly back
And that may be fine for them. Other people may be, okay, I'm done. They get up and they go along their life. So it becomes to me more of an individual basis of what is needed for an individual person or student.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to, we had exchanged some notes prior to the show, and it was something that really, well, all of it intrigued me because you intrigued me. But one of them was you had put down continuity of life evidence versus channeling.
Yeah.
Talk to us. Tell us
sure. Now, to me, and I know you do some channeling, Tracy. I've been around people doing channeling.
Not publicly. I just sort of think of sometimes bringing messages through as
like a flow of consciousness.
Yeah, it's like you connect with the spirit and then yes, you're channeling them. But I don't do like public. I can, but I don't. I just don't. It's not my calling to do, languages of light or channeling specifically. I admire those that dedicate to that.
So to me, we look at it from two different perspectives. Channeling is really, to me, a stream of conscious flow from the spirit world. The channeler may know who they're speaking to or may not. However, it's very difficult to prove to a client or a group actually who it is.
Oh, right. And maybe it is an ascended master, not saying it isn't, but it isn't a way that you can't, it's sort of like past life stuff is fascinating and it comes in. Oh, yes. But how do you prove that?
So when we look at evidence of continuity of life in mediumship connection, we are working with a specific communicator for that client. The communicator, through the medium, should be identified as who they are, meaning what is the relationship? Is it grandmother on maternal side? Is it mother? Is it stepmother? So you have who is it? Then the evidence of the communication are things like what was there as the client knew them, their personality, what were their likes, what were their dislikes, what were some memories that they shared with the client, were there memories that they shared with the client, did they know the client, what was their death process, what happened after their death process, what happened with the client since their death process. All of these things that start to become evidential pieces of who that communicator is, the medium cannot prove to the client that's who it is. The client needs to take that information and make their own decision.
Associations, yes.
That was my grandmother. That was my mom. That was my dad. That was my sister. That was my brother.
Yeah, they used to do that. They said to me, "Oh my God, yes, I put that type of flower on their grave." Yes. Oh, yes, I have a trinket in the box that I keep, and yes, I do have something in my purse. Kind of thing. Yes.
And to me, that information, then, if to the client, their own decision process, can to them say, you know what, after this physical body is done, who we are, the good and the bad of us, the pluses and the minuses, the prejudices, whatever we carry with us moves forward. And hopefully we have some opportunity to build that, to change some of those things again, to grow. Yes. And I look at that as it's the continuity of life. It doesn't stop. It continues in a different way.
Yeah. I think those evidences do two things, at least two things. One of them, it confirms for the person that's there or brings back to their memory, what's there of what that was. And I like that you said, as they knew them, because it's very personal based on that. And I think that boosts their confidence too. It boosts the client's confidence that they're there, and that sets the stage for, not in a showy way by any means, but a platform or a foundation for freer communication that's new information. It's sort of like, who is it? And that you identify that particular bond, and then, this is what they're saying, this is what they, giving me an impression that they look like, or that you start talking in using their mannerisms or gesticulations, and then it goes into a freer communication where you maybe can't prove, but you've already established that it is that person.
Yeah, and what I find really important about that is, okay, we're not going to say it's. I've got some man here. He passed from something with the heart. Who is that to you? We don't want the clients. It's not the client's job to give the information of who it is. It's our job as mediums to give that information.
I think that too speaks to the depth of training, because we can, perceive the presence of spirits as we develop, there, or even spontaneously, as we were talking about earlier. But drawing that association, because it's not really helpful if you tell somebody, I see green around you, and there's a man with spectacles standing behind you, and he's Caucasian and slim and has dark hair combed to the side with kind of a greasy thing there. It's interesting, but it isn't, I think that's the level that I would consider like maybe an intuitive arts specialist. Right. It isn't even quite psychic. It's definitely not mediumistic in the fullest sense of the word, because like you said, they're not drawing the association. The client is gathering that, the pieces together. Green was their favorite color versus I'm seeing green, and when I see green, I think about healing, and I think about growth, and I think that you're going through blah, blah, and it kind of continues. It's a deepening of the evidence, and it's easy to get something, especially new people that are practicing, and it's kind of like so amazing to just have that aspect of us affirmed, and to be able to see and to trust what you're seeing. But you can kind of get, like you said, lost in that, to where it's the experience of the reader seeing the information but not connecting it for the client, who just really wants to know the next level of information there, and learning to deepen that. Yeah.
Well, I think the other important part of the evidence part of mediumship is that if there is an opinion that comes from the communicator, then we better know who we're talking to, in order to accept or not accept that opinion. Because if I have somebody saying to me, I have a man here, I don't know who he is, but he seems to be around you a lot, and he's telling you to, that you need to go and get your car serviced, or, that you need to change a job, or you need to change a relationship, or whatever it happens to be. Yeah. Well, am I really going on that information to leave and run to the next thing, and to change my job or change my relationship or whatever it is based on that?
Yeah, no, they're not. We're not robots.
The scary part of that is that some people will, because it's, quote, the spirit world.
Yeah. Yes. So very right. Oh,
so the evidence of the communicator needs to be such that person, for the client, is given enough information that then they can make the decision for themselves, because we need to empower people rather than to take their power from them. And by giving them enough evidence of the communicator or communicators, then they can take that and make their own decision based on the, quote, opinion of the spirit world, not the spirit world saying you must go and do this, and I don't know who the heck you are.
Right. And, that goes for I don't consider guides mediumship, but I consider meeting guides useful for transitioning into being able to discern spirits. But I kind of think of guides and angels still sort of on that border, like more on the psychic realm, even though they are visual connections. Because like you said earlier, you can't really prove it. Do you know what I mean? You can by resonance, you can by that, but you know, people get one of the things that concerns me, and I try to address too in teaching, is your guides are not there to tell you what to do. So if somebody is saying, my guide told me to do this, and I don't mean inspired me to go to Target and pick up a timer. Yes, they can help you because you've already said, I want a timer. But I'm talking about that autopilot, that non-thinking, that lack of free will thing. My guides told me that. And also overlaying and projecting emotions that were maybe hurtful in childhood to the guides, or to even to spirits as mediums open up their mediumship, connecting with the lower aspects of someone, the critical nature, or the most bizarre and disturbing example I had was someone who was opening up, and she did have some issues, and you know, she said that her guides were having sex with her. And I was like, no, I don't think so. You know, those are not your guides.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So talking about vetting the spirit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you know, I look at it also, you know, we all have, for lack of a better word, guides. You know, we all have a group that hopefully somehow, if we listen, guides us in certain areas.
Yes,
however, in mediumship, I always look at it as we have a group or we have a team, but we're not communicating with the team. We're communicating with a communicator for that client. Our team's job is to make sure everything's being done in the background to get that communicator to the communication and get them prepped for what my team knows I need in the communication, in the way I work. Those guidelines we talked about earlier, and what we expect from the spirit world, and what we set up to work best with the spirit world. So my team, my guides, that's their job. Yes. And then they need to get out of the way while the communication is going on. Yes. I don't need to know what they're doing in the background, but that's their job.
Yes, and so, exactly. Yeah.
So therefore the communication part with the communicator for the client is between them and me and the client, not between them and 5 other people in this group.
Yes, because it's a system, and there's a flow of organization. You know, they have agreed to come in and assist us. Our angels are there. They protect our life contract. I don't introduce my guides when I read, because, you know, oh my God, we're at the end of the hour. No! Sharon, oh my goodness.
That went very quick.
Oh my goodness, we could have kept on too, girl. Sharon Siubis, innerspiritualcenter.org.
Yes, ma'am.
And listeners, remember, it's never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing.